The Third Doctor and Joe face the Cybermen again in the Quintessence after first encountering them in the Miniscope and then in the Tyrant of Logic. We have the older Joe and the Third Doctor facing the Mondasian Cybermen in the Quintessence, a six-part story by Stuart Pringle and Lauren Mooney.
It released on the 10th of October, 10/10. Is it a 10 out of 10? We shall find out in due course as we discuss this. It starts at this old Victorian manor house known as Always. But it's not in your typical Victorian manor house location, is it? This
No,
isn't one
it's
you can get into with your National Trust membership. This is off on the stormy world of Nefara Reach.
it's a bit like the house that Hawks built in a way. You sort of that similar feel to it. From the classic Doctor's New Monsters Volume 3, where we've got this very interesting family setup of the Pepperdine family with a
Yeah.
sickly child of Emmeline, who has contacted Joe, which leads the Doctor and Joe to arrive at said house.
Yeah, she reaches out to her through mysterious means. And that's where they run into Lucy and Arthur Pepperdine, the mother and father of the household. And yeah, it's all goes a bit topsy-turvy from there.
Yeah, because they're being sort of guided by these mysterious angels, which I think we know what these angels are, and it all becomes clear that these are not, angels of joy. These are angels of death, as such.
Yeah, they're not as benevolent as they may appear, or are they? That's one of the interesting aspects of this story because it's the Cybermen, and we know about their mission to convert everyone in existence,
In
make
a,
them like them.
in a way, it's kind of a
Convert.
religious order because they're here to
Mm,
convert people for their cause.
yeah, they want to remove emotions because they believe it's better for everyone else. And this story sort of touches on that idea of, could this actually be a good thing? And it
Yes,
sort of looks into why that might be a temptation for some, especially with Jo Jones here,
yes.
where she is losing lots of people around her. She's lost dear old Cliff not too long before this story, before she started traveling with the Third Doctor again in The Return of Jo Jones. And so here, there's almost this temptation of uh, what if you could live forever? Your family could live forever. You never have to feel that loss again. But of course, there is the
There's a
unfortunate
catch.
side effect there of getting your guts churned out and
Becoming
scraped
mincemeat.
into a metal shell, never feeling anything at all again, never
I mean,
feeling that
this is
happiness you get.
one thing what I love about this story is how it explores the body horror aspect of the Cybermen, especially in I think episode 4 when you look at underneath the mask of a Cyberman, underneath the bandage, as it were,
Mm,
how it's sort of very grisly how it's described. So it can make you feel a bit sick with the detail it goes with it, which I think is what you need when you've got the Mondasian Cybermen there.
yeah, they're leaning into that. I think one of the most horrific moments actually is when they're scanning for a particular life sign and then
Mm,
multiple turn up, and then the
yes.
realization of what that means. There's some very understated moments like that feel very creepy. This isn't your typical third Doctor story in tone, I would
It's a
say,
bit like
particularly.
Kaleidoscope, isn't it? Because you get so many different things within it, especially episode 5. Episode 5,
Mm,
it turned the story upside down, and you feel a bit disorientated, going, "Hang on, what's going on here?" You wait. It's a bit like what the War Master, Master Callus, does, but you're expecting something to happen.
mm. To me, it feels like it's structured like a new series.
Hmm.
finale, even, those big 3-part finales.
Yeah.
Because you have the first third being a bit more contained, a bit more on its own. And then as you go into the second 2/3, you have another shift of locations where the story ends up. But then even after that, you've got a bit of a twist for that final third, like you say in episode 5. And, with the more emotionally in touch side of things you have here as well with Joe, it does feel more new series to me.
Yeah, I think there's sort of a balance of tone because you've got the very sort of retro music of the third Doctor within, and I love how it incorporates Emmeline's song within the actual incidental music, which I think is very chilling. And I think
Some
this
chilling
story
moments using that song.
really utilizes older Joe, like you say, with the character moments with Cliff and that, and especially towards the latter end. But you see a shift in the Bree and Joe's dynamic because the third Doctor falls over in part 1. It's a very subtle moment, and Joe's the one picking him up. Whereas the third Doctor's a character who's, wraps his companion in his cloak and go, there, my dear, it'll be all right, I'll protect you. Here we've got Joe sort of going straight into the sort of action moments of like not thinking about it. She's just seeing, there's horror. I'm here to make a difference. Whereas, the third Doctor's quite reserved and measured, assessing the situation here, really, which I think shows a completely contrast in their dynamic, how it's changed, really. And I think this is a better representation of this new dynamic than what was in the first set.
It's one of the ones that has used an older companion in general the best,
Yes.
I think. You get a more grandmotherly side to Joe as well. It leans into that. And like you say, she is still the same character with that emotional side of things. She is diving on head first because it's the right thing to do. Whereas the third Doctor is a bit more apprehensive at times, almost, to the extent, it's the logical thing to do here. There's almost that battle of the Cybermen there where it's emotion versus logic, and the Doctor's the one trying to be logical at times. But in the end, Joe is in the right. I think there's some fascinating moments there. It is very much this pair throughout the story. It's a very
episode 3.
Yeah,
It's just them exploring Mondas.
Intimate story, I would say, which I think is very true to Laura Mooney and Stuart Pringle's style. When you look at a lot of their Torchwoods and such, I feel like even though this is stretched to a 6-parter, it's still keeping to that core, which is a very different way of doing a 6-parter, but it doesn't make it drag at all.
I disagree.
Oh, you do?
I think this would be a much better 4-parter.
I think it could have been, but I don't think it drags as a 6-parter.
This story's weird for me because I wasn't gelling with it, and there's a big reason why I didn't gel with it, which I'll get onto later. But there was something about the story where I was like, I want to listen on, but while I was listening to it, I was just really not feeling it, and I was just like, this is kind of dragging a little bit now.
I feel like I reasonably flew through this one. It didn't drag so much for me, but at the same time, I could see it have made a tighter 4-parter.
Yeah.
But yeah, certainly I enjoyed all the moments of exploring Mondas.
Part 3 is my favourite, I would say.
You very much get some spare parts throwbacks in there as well. This is clearly made with love for a lot of the other Mondasian Cyberman stories. And I think it's interesting visiting Mondas at this point in its history, where, everyone is now cyber converted. And so it's very much hostile territory for the Doctor and Joe to be thrust into.
They're in these sort of hazmat suits. So, because the surface is that barren and, dangerous.
Radioactivity and pollution and such. It's does a very good job of world building Mondas in this period. This is the Mondas that is on its way to Earth now. What held this one back for you then?
I feel like an absolute hypocrite saying this one because we've done a massive video praising this range and a certain person. And I think the thing that let this story down for me was Tim.
Oh, really?
I thought Tim, I think because this story's pushing the third Doctor in different ways. And I think Tim, I think episode 1 and 2, I really struggled with him within it because it almost felt like he didn't have the gruff gravel of Pertwee's voice, which you get in sort of episode 3 and the latter end of the story, where I'm like, oh, it's back. It's like the first 2 episodes, there's a little bit of a filter on there to him. And it seems a little bit more, I don't want to say higher pitch, but it seems like a different frequency to how he normally pitches it. And I think there are certain moments in the story where I'm like, that doesn't seem the right choice for it, which feels wrong to say because of how he's done brilliantly with this role. And listening to Volume 4, I'm like, he sounds closer to the third Doctor in that than he does in this, which is crazy to say, really. But I just felt he felt very off because there'd be a lot of outburst within it with a lot of shouty moments of like, oh, the Cybermen are coming, and you'd hear the Welsh twang. And I think this is the thing, if you can't hear that character's voice, he's sort of your main gateway into this story. As much as Joe is the person pushing the story, the third Doctor is very much a part of that. And I think I was really struggling to grasp the story because he was taking me out of the story.
Oh, that's a shame to hear.
Yeah.
Because I know he mentions that this one was a bit more of a challenge because it's not quite the third Doctor as he's used to him. He is a bit more apprehensive in this one at times. And I think when you look at the TV era there's less evidence of that for him to
I think that
research
might be
upon.
The right thing as well, because the third Doctor is a Doctor who is so sure of himself, he doesn't admit that he's wrong. And in this story, you have him admitting it's my fault why we took so long to get here with a certain character. So yeah, it seems maybe it's part of the third Doctor's character arc of him realizing,
because this is later on in his life. This is now at a point where he doesn't have the frustrations of being exiled to Earth. Yeah. And he's also traveling with an older Joe who is perhaps bringing out a different side to him. I mean, I feel like the Cybermen voices were perhaps a bit off at times as well.
They didn't seem like your traditional 10th planet Cybermen
I think
voices.
you'd get the odd Cyberman voice that does. But then you'd have others that sound almost too metallic.
Yeah.
I mean, did you imagine this as the traditional 10th planet ones or the new series, World Enough and Time, Dr. Falls?
I imagined sort of a mixture of the World Enough and Time ones in a way and the ones on the Jenny cover.
Oh, yeah.
For the one, what is in, I think, episode 4. Because it's got some interesting ideas about can you reverse conversion and can you get that person back, which I think that's a neat idea, which is, I guess, a callback to like the monthly range trilogy of like the harvest, the gathering and the reaping.
You have a reference to a metallic hand in it, like robotic hands, which doesn't quite line up with what you'd imagine for the 10th planet design, where you very much see the veins still on the hand there.
Yeah. I mean, we did get a reference to Torrent of Logic, which I think was rather nice.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's nice to know that trauma is still with them both.
Even though there was a moment before that reference was like, oh, they're glazing over that. And then the next scene they mentioned it, and you're like, oh, okay.
There were a couple of times, like when they ran into a Cybermat, where I was thinking, right, have they actually paid attention to Tyrants of Logic here? And then I was like, oh no, they have. They've done their research. It's almost like we were looking for a got you.
You're waiting for it, yeah. I mean,
but no, it is true to the original.
I was a little bit confused because, like, I don't remember there be a scene where they took the hazmat suits off. In it,
there's little moments like that,
and you're like, oh, have I missed something? Because they're like, oh, we need to put them back on, and I'm like, but you haven't taken them off though. Yeah,
Jubilee Apadovsk.
Yeah,
so I know they took the helmets of them off.
Yeah.
We're getting into the nitty-gritty
Yeah. This
nitpick
is it.
territory here
Yeah.
of this is stuff that if anyone hasn't listened to the story watching this is being like, what on earth are those
They're just
nerds
getting
on
their
about?
miserable buggers complaining about these little minor deals that probably matter to nobody, but because we're
I think
so
it's
protective for this range and we know what it can achieve.
I think as well it's that thing of when it's left to your imagination with audio drama and you sort of like you've got this image in your head of what's going on,
Yeah.
and then something is mentioned in the dialogue that doesn't quite line up with that image. You're like, right, well, I've got to retroactively
Change
go
that now.
back and change that in my mind. And it's, yeah, there were a couple of times where I was flicking back and forth between, right, have they got them on? Have they not got them on?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. All this over some blooming hazmat suits.
Exactly. You don't get that anywhere else
No.
in Big Fish reviews.
I mean, I think to sum up for me, I was shocked by how intimate it was, with it very much being focusing on the same small group of characters throughout. Like when you look at the cast list, there's only 7 of them, I think. Yeah. 7 cast members throughout this. And I'd say only really 4 major players. Yeah. And the fact that it worked as well as it did, I think is impressive. It's the first time that an older companion returning has really worked for me. And yeah, it's got some horrific body horror moments as well. But yeah, I'm not sure about the conclusion of it though. I think where it builds to emotionally, it mostly works for me.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of just pure plot, I suppose, it sort of feels like it's a bit stuck towards the end there.
It feels very new series in a way, doesn't it? Like, oh crap, we've got to get this done now, and it feels a bit Chibnall finale in a way. Reminded me a bit of the Time of Children.
Yeah, I can see that. I know exactly.
Yeah, you know where I'm going with this. Yeah.
So, I mean, in summary for you, the Quintessence.
Character moments great. Cybermen moments, what there are of them, they're great because there's not many Cybermen moments within it. They're not full.
They're more a looming presence than an actual.
Especially when you sort of get exploring Mondas and that sort of they're out there patrolling, waiting. You know, I love that. But yeah, there were just a few little barriers that stopped me from really engaging with it. Maybe this is like another kaleidoscope where I revisit it and I get it. I know what I'm in for now, so I'll enjoy it more. But for me right now, I'd say it's a 7 out of 10.
I go an 8, I think, for this one.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we're off to our old familiar territory next time of season 7. Which, I mean, it's the cozy era, isn't it? I think it's where, at the moment, the Third Doctor adventures are at their best with Liz Shaw and the Brigadier. So we've got Doctor Who and the Brain Drain to look forward to come February. But for now, that wraps up the Third Doctor adventures
for 2024.
Yeah. And yeah, that wraps up this review as well. So take it away in the comments below. Let us know your thoughts if you listen to this.
How pedantic we've been.
Tell us about the hazmats.
Yeah. Because it's a big thing. It's a big thing.
Yeah, and let us know if you're tempted to pick this one up. If you have not yet. Yeah. We'll see you all in the next video.
Bye-bye.
Until then, take care, everyone.